When I tried in the context of my Twitter, which is tuned to um, climate reform issues, unlike my TikTok, which is where the war in Gaza is being broadcast through, an issue I plan to return to. I was temporarily at a crossroads in my thinking that was induced by someone who wound compared over the silence regarding issues that I raised from the 80s. That ecocide is the greatest atrocity ever, which is, I suppose, absolutely true. But it's very demeaning when you're talking about a genocide crime to start pulling Trump that way, and I had to think about what I wanted to say. Shifty chose this topic in his hypnographic way with his alliance with Hitler Reagan being the topic of Tupac Shakur, which is, where I come from, is the idea that influence and what is influencing young people should be discussed in schools. And due to the temper of the times and UW Dialectical's alliance with Hitler Reagan, the atrocitarians try to make it sound like a grievance that they have against liberal educators, that we don't face up to the combat in our society. Well, like any other self-respecting member of Phi Theta Kappa, I do not begrudge forthcoming conversations and presentations which might help students and peers come to grips with how to make our community colleges more sensible to the world around us. As some people know and secretly hypertrophy for reasons that I suppose are understandable if they're very close to Tupac Shakur, that they know that I filed a police report over 2 packs of cigarettes and some gun smoke that I found in my mailbox in Pittsburgh. Out of respect for this individual, I reported that. It was a golden opportunity for me to claim someone I didn't like was impinging it on my environment to make me a marked man in gangster habits of mind. I didn't do that. The reason I didn't do that was not as clear to me as my reasons for not digging in the dirt of what happened to Mackenzie Shirilla. But as time has gone by, I have clarified for myself my aversion. It seems to me to be a fair witness. What we're witnessing in these situations, there's a word for it that I didn't know at that time. Hybrid wargaming. Okay. Now I can explain why I don't dig deeper, although there's several reasons. In order to maximize my effectiveness as a witness, I have to limit myself to what I observed and not read into it. Now, knowing what happened to Alina Shaykhit, someone was triggered. and played it for a race crime and ended up with a double homicide issue. Black Lives Matter say tell us what you know and then go beyond and above any reasonable sense of fair play. And I'm going to get to this because it shows that it's a travesty to the memory of Tupac Shakur, even if they think it's not. Yes, I'm going to lecture you as a reedy old school teacher, but I'm going to do so on the basis of your own beliefs. You see, UW Dialectical and Shifty made a play on academics with the royal class. With the help of Trumpy Toon and Kanye West and Diamond Gullis, Yoko Ono set up the whole fabrication about Lenin in a World War II revenge scenario that was illustrated in the movie Diva. An African filmmaker had a Japanese woman who really liked his work. And she said that Diva was her favorite movie, a new wave movie in which they advertise. The script is in the kids' mailbag, and they show my birthday, which is tomorrow. And they show the pattern in the symbolism that they use in the movie that illustrates the fact that by telling a story, they're using a cast, and the cast is cast as opposing pairs, binaries, when really they party behind the scenes. It's the partying behind the scenes that matter in Hollywood dialecticals, not in the way they pretend. That movie came out before AIDS happened. It has the song, I Can't Breathe, This Island Earth. The formula of Pink Floyd, Geofluid, Freudian psychology, is illustrated in this movie. And what you see in this movie is the premise that everybody believes the chief of police is the person to report to. And they simply advertised what they were doing. Pitt turned immediately to Reagan Most Holy, and he was sanctified with the Hollywood, bang bang operation by Pentagon Disney. As all the evidence shows, national security won't allow them to open the lid on the evidence files, so nobody talks about it. Well, it turns out that Saporta was in on the crime, and this is just a simple illustration of what they had going with Hitler-Reagan. Now, Dialectical has conned Tupac's Minutemen into providing all information to Hitler-Reagan's man in Havana, Clint Eastwood. So it creates the loop that they need. Well, come on, tell us what you know. Come on, tell us what you know. And Shifty's salary at present isn't at stake, even though they murdered my father and played two virgins pussy ball. But their claim to be street scholars is the emperor's new clothes. If they take over universities, they're not going to have an honor code that they can spell out, unless they can convince all of our society that two virgins pussy ball, it should be made martial law. I mean, if they can do that, I suppose they will. But it's a travesty to what I know of Tupac, which is very little. The other reason I haven't gone into what I know about Tupac very deeply is because I've seen some things he wrote that I thought well of, but I've heard that he was abusive of women, for example. And I know that the Rose Clemente crowd working with Trumpy Tune and Penis Gabriel tortured me using phantoms of fright and taking away. I mean, they made me out to be some kind of monk of King Crimson because I lost my lover and they castrated me. It's up to Gallaudet University for the Deaf where they put that in University of Pittsburgh's legacy. Oh, he went on writing poetry. Well, sure. But it's a travesty to the person of Tupac for the simple reason that I want to like what the best of him, and you can make a defense of him from the point of view of Zora Neale Hurston. He was simply plumbing the linguistics of his era. Now, there is, however, a limit to what UW Dialectical sells and what academics can legitimately accept. And I'm going to lay down what I see as what should be the law in the matter. And it comes down to the difference of what is meant when Richard Wright is referred to as the demonic genius, and what is meant when the NAACP, who helped this Green Party pull Two Virgins Pussy Ball, talks about black psychology, which of course the white women are all cooing about in favor of Yoko Ono because it comes in the attire of unlimited understanding for persons on death row, for example. Sympathy for the devil, as they put it, was behind cheering on the men who tortured me, calling Lenin Casper as though that was found art when in reality it was planned back in the days when Reagan and Flynn were evacuating Adolf Hitler under the code name Lazarus, trying to out Houdini, who was himself apparently a loyal spy for the American executive. When they impinged the operation of Tupac, I resisted and continue to resist putting phantoms on it that could incite revenge against what I would prefer to believe are innocent people, because there were a lot of people who were being very, very cruel to me. And it's not proven that Tupac himself was one of them, although it is impossible to know who all Yoko Ono was pot boiling in her very disturbing Axis revenge plan. But Richard Wright, I want to tell you my personal opinion of the man is that he has firepower beyond Thomas Mann in some very colloquial ways, but he's a traditionalist. He's hardcore traditional Germanic, high Germanic literature, but he gets into the heart and soul and experience of traumatized, terrified, and understandably uppity black kids. He's a genius. But what he does isn't limited to his literature. His literature isn't unequivocally tolerant. He didn't really agree with Zora Neale Hurston, even though he was bringing to life the experience and language of the black underclass as much as she was. He wasn't whitewashing away how they talked and what they lived and what they dreamed and their nightmares in the manner of Frederick Douglass, who was honing his pitch to emancipation, legalities, and historical picturesque realism. There's nothing wrong with Frederick Douglass. But this is what they meant when they said Richard Wright was a demonic genius. Richard Wright was capable of stopping and observing the black man beating his chest And he said these people were going to end up black fascists. And he wasn't taciturn about that. He didn't like it. So when they come bleeding hard, you look at Native Son, right? Native Son was like, I never found out what happened to Algebra Sean. But the teacher said, be quiet, Sean. Everything you say makes it worse. That's what happened to Native Son. Everything he did made the situation worse. And of course, UW Dialectical will come weeping with panty dew with their theories of unlimited understanding. It's not proven that that's what Richard Wright had in mind. He may have had in mind jerking their chains and making them hear the liberals' weepy cry for a man who cut up a girl and threw her in a furnace. His sympathy is improved. So, when you have the interpretation of Tupac that assumes that he would go along with what people have done to his legacy, I'm inclined to think there's another case. But like Steve Mallory and Ayn Rand's Fountainhead, I don't want to know because I'm afraid I'll be sick. I'm afraid I'll lose what respect I have for him. What Kanye West and Putin have done is created these kinds of alarmist hybrid war games amidst our streets and gotten UW Dialectical to chip in with what they call street scholars. You take hostage a chair of education saying it's to protect their heads from the rain. Really, the lost lover monk situation that they made me out to be has informed my sense of being able to live up to academic standards despite having been attacked by a death row from the leapfrog oligarchs. So I'm Justin Phi Theta Kappa. Shifty and his Green Party are playing a game of a wrinkle in Yo-Yimbo. Here's what that means. Yo-Yimbo is hard enough to understand. It means you have objects that are identified in stereotypical sociological categories. Now, the ROTC is sometimes resisted at campuses at community college. This is the ROTC's worst nightmare. This is the people who resist the ROTC's worst nightmare, and yet they're solidly behind it. That's how crank the idea of Tupac fans going, hop, 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 let's tell Hitler Reagan. Let's tell Clint Eastwood everything and see what he thinks. When these men were supporter in Diva, they were the people who were manipulating the whole show. So you have Yo-Yimbo is these symbols of black, white, Asian, girl, boy, fat, transvestite, queer. And you know that there's going to be a flash mob towards anything that happens to one of them in media. And people like Joel Kaplan, a Jewish kid who worked with Gail Burstyn, Robert Fripp, John Schulman, and Yoko Ono on the horrible murder of senior faculty, my dear father, and the torture of me and ensnarement and pussy ball, and the AIDS testing war game, Two Virgins, and so on. These people are expert at flash mobs. Joel Kaplan goes around, he's a pawn shop operator, so he knows what everybody's debts are, what everybody's grudges are. And he goes around and incites. And the Steelers are in town to say, oh, you think you can stop us, queerball. Nobody thinks anybody can stop anybody. The hybrid war game that's gone on with Gaza has 6-year-old kids, 3-year-old kids being blown away. You know, Zionist pawn shop brokers have all kinds of people warding you off from Chicago, from Camden. You don't want to mix up with them people. They're like Zionists. You know, so the familiars of these people need to understand that Yojimbo is when the same agency hits both sides to get them fighting so that they can be weakened and manipulated. Well, the wrinkle in Yojimbo goes even deeper than that. The wrinkle in Yojimbo goes down to the fact that support is in there. Because if you actually diagnose Yojimbo and took it to the Supreme Executive Authority, he would say, I understand what you're saying, and we're going to get our best detectives on it to make sure that nobody makes a feud out of a double homicide. Make sure that nobody makes a feud out of a double homicide. Make sure of it. Instead, you get support that's saying, show me the proof. And then he goes to his subordinates. They don't realize it's me. A wrinkle in Yojimbo.